All right, my name is Greg Verone. This is the Ethical Leader presentation for Dr. Garrett's Kin505 Ethics and Leadership in Kinesiology class at CVU. All right, so next, my chosen career. I'm going back to school right now to be a high school physical education teacher, and I want to continue coaching soccer. I've been coaching soccer now at the high school level since I graduated high school a couple of years ago, and I've kind of found my niche within this high school setting, and I really want to be a role model and a mentor for both student and student athletes at the high school level. And I want to show them specifically how exercise can be fun and how beneficial it is long-term, short-term, and how it impacts every part of our lives. And I think there's a lot of lifelong lessons that I can teach and I can help my students understand, because I learned a lot of my values and a lot of who I am during this time, and especially with the teachers who impacted me the most. And so that's why I feel that my place is working with these teens and young adults. And then the leadership style that I currently strive towards or strive for is transformational leadership, because I think that's the most impactful. And it's the style of leadership that focuses on building trust, acts with integrity, inspires others, coaches and encourages innovative thinking. And I think this is the highest level to get, especially with this population with the teens and young adults. This kind of leadership is going to set them up for the future, to get them to think critically about their lives, about everything in their life, and be able to grow as human beings and individuals. And so this idea, transformational leadership, focuses on idealized influence, inspirational motivation being the key right there, intellectual stimulation, really tapping into the mental aspect of everything, and then individualized consideration, being mindful about every single person within the group, and not just being okay, group, today we're doing this, but being very specific, individualized attention. All right, so the first leadership strategy that I want to kind of tackle and take a look at is developing inclusive leadership and effective communication. And the article that I specifically looked at with this, Jane 2018, it basically talks about how effective communication leads to and includes inclusive leadership. And so they kind of go hand in hand. And so a summary of the strategy, there are 4 attributes to becoming an effective leader. And these attributes spell out the acronym each: empowerment, accountability, courage, and humility. And so these are all effective communication tools that help develop inclusive leadership. And so I'm going to run through these really quick. Empowerment means converting a situation where communication is blocked by factors such as intimidation or fear into a situation where the communicators are free to speak and free to kind of speak their mind and open up, as long as they're doing it from a polite and a respectful way. Accountability is holding yourself and others responsible for inclusive communication. Courage is the willingness to and the ability to engage across differences. It requires vulnerability and requires us to be willing to step out of our comfort zone and communicate and interact with other people. And last is humility. Humility is taking the opportunity to reflect and to think about how we can learn, understand, and accept our mistakes, as well as learn from others. And this specifically has to do with criticism about our own limitations, about where we need improvement, as well as going proactively after and getting feedback, so we can develop and grow. And so each of the attributes, when they're combined together, it creates effective communication and creates an inclusive leadership style that creates inclusivity between the group. And so it makes others feel included, valued, and heard. So why is it effective? These skills help tackle communication challenges between the leader and the follower, or followers. So in my case, between me and my students. Breaking down barriers and building connections. How it tackles these communication challenges is it breaks down the barrier between teachers and students, and it allows us to feel like we're equally heard and we're equally included in the conversation. and it helps build connections and it helps build relationships. And just off the bat, communication is arguably the most important skill for any good educator or leader, for matter of fact. And then how to implement the strategy. Develop an understanding of the 4 attributes and recognize when to use each skill to develop inclusivity and to develop our own, as educators, our own effective communication, so that we're able to get through to the students, so that the students are able to feel heard, to feel valued, to feel listened, so that respect and connection is formed, so that we can actually start building upon that connection. All right, so the second leadership strategy that I want to discuss is becoming a culturally fluent leader. Cultural fluency is an expansion of cultural competency. It's an ongoing process of critical reflection. It attempts to accurately interpret intercultural interactions, and it focuses on the idea of developing a conscientious ignorance, which is acknowledging social constructs without creating assumptions for any demographic or individuals or groups. And so it focuses on 3 attributes: decoding, context, and code shifting. So decoding is about interpreting both verbal and nonverbal communication, basically to determine an accurate meaning of what's going on or the situation at hand. And this improves in practice. Context includes the expectation or the purpose of the sender and the receiver in the message, as well as the various aspects of the location and the situation in which the message is being delivered. And then code shifting just kind of implements both of these, and is basically what happens during the interaction of switching back and forth in between what you understand from a cultural perspective and then what you are interpreting from the person you're speaking to. And the reason why this is really important, just right off the bat, I grew up in a very predominantly Caucasian city and town, and I live predominantly now in a very Hispanic and a very Latino predominant town, and even the soccer players that I currently work with, there are, I think, 3 or 4 of them who don't even speak English, and so understanding this idea of cultural fluency, it's going to help me become a better leader, and it's going to help me understand where my students are coming from, and it's going to help me get through to my students on an entirely different level. And then why it's effective. Cultural fluency allows professionals to adapt to the changing needs of a diverse society. Basically, it breaks down the connection between this person's different than myself. How can I find a connection? Verbal, nonverbal. Studies have shown that living in a corrupt and unethical society leads to long-term negative effects on the health. So basically, this is going to help the society grow together as a diverse society, and it helps develop mutual understanding and respect between individuals and groups. And then how to implement the strategy. Understanding cultural fluency will not only help me teach cultural fluency to my students, but it also help me acting as a culturally fluent role model for my students, and just for myself, understanding this concept and being respectful to people who are different from myself, it goes a long ways. And this is this entire idea is trying to find some common ground among the differences. And our last leadership strategy, developing and implementing servant leadership qualities into my own leadership style, which is transformational leadership. So the summary of a strategy: the needs of the followers, players, students outweighs the needs of the organization, the team, any of my players. This theory contrasts traditional leader first paradigms or even the organizational first, and it puts the focus on the student or the student athlete. It helps develop an understanding of how to think about something outside of oneself. Me not even as the leader, kind of being a role model to my students and showing them servant leadership It's going to help them understand servant leadership from a player or a student perspective, and see how to achieve the goal, but by allowing the students to kind of develop their own path to get there. This emphasizes personal growth of the followers first, trusting in their followers to do what is necessary to complete the goal. So essentially, servant leadership provides the ethical grounding and the leadership framework needed to address the changes and the challenges of our society and of the 21st century in general. So servant leadership contrasts the approaches that were once thought of to be like the way to do things and the way to lead people, which was transactional and even somewhat, in some cases, transformational. And so essentially the world does not have to be like this. It can be focused on our students, on our student athletes, on our followers, and we can put the trust in them to get the job done. So why is it effective? It can enhance organizational and leader trust, preventing the corruption or the corruptive nature of educational and athletic programs. And I'm gonna get to destructive programs in a second, destructive and toxic programs, but we're talking about programs in general, especially athletic programs and especially educational programs, where a lot of the focus was on making money. A lot of the focus was on setting up this kind of setting the environment for the teachers. And now it's how can we get our students, how can we get our student athletes to perform not only at a higher level, but to understand how to become better in every single part of their life, so that we can develop prudent, rational human beings. You know what I mean? And so how to implement the strategy, incorporating this leadership style into my daily leadership interactions on a daily basis with student or players is going to help me inch closer to kind of throwing in these attributes and the servant leadership qualities into my own leadership style, and just being aware and understanding of priorities, and that it doesn't always need to be about organizational priorities, because when it comes down to coaching a team, it's about getting that W, but that may not be the best approach to things, and it may be, let's develop our players and let's develop them as individuals. And you know what, if the outcome is there, and so I talk about having fun, and if they're not having fun and we're getting W's, does it really matter? And so focusing more on what my student or student athletes need instead of what the team needs. And basically what I just covered, or in case, what do I need? I as a leader, the way my thought process is I should be here for my student and my student athletes for whatever they need me for. As long as it's ethical and as long as it's respectful, that should be an educator's goal, is to try and develop their students or their players as much as they possibly can in every single aspect of life.